Good afternoon. This is Adam Small here with the Agent Sauce Real Estate Marketing Podcast, and with me, as always, is Doug Carr.
Hello, sir.
How you doing today, Doug?
I am fantastic.
Great. So, listen, you just recently gave a presentation, keynote speaking on Internet of Things for
I did.
marketing purposes, right?
I did.
Very interesting topic and something that's really coming up. So, I was thinking today we could talk about the Internet of Things for marketing.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be a good one.
Great. So, well, let's start off with explaining what Internet of Things is. I think that it's kind of a really nebulous term for a lot of people. So let's start there.
It is actually a nebulous term. It's basically it's talking about everything that is connective, and that means passively or actively connected to the internet. And what I mean by that is, let's say a car like Tesla is IoT. It's basically that there's a connection between the car and the internet to download and upload information and everything else. But it's not a like a computer that you're going to log into or whatever. It's a device. And so these devices they act somewhat autonomously, like a car has to be able to dodge a deer if it jumps out in front of it. And it has to have connectivity so that it can download algorithms and data and everything else.
Software updates and that sort of thing, right?
And so more often than not, what people are talking about IoT is, let's say, a watch. So, Apple Watch or something like that.
Smartwatch.
Yeah, smartwatch. Same thing, right? It's not always connected to the internet.
Right.
But it's collecting data and it's doing things. And then when it connects to your mobile device, it uploads and stuff. And then voice search devices like Amazon Alexa and Google Home and Apple
iHome? What is
no,
I don't know
I
what
can't
it is.
remember.
It's not iHome.
No,
is
it's
it?
not. I forget. It's
HomePod.
expensive.
HomePod.
It's expensive.
It's expensive. It's Apple. It's expensive.
HomePod, yeah. And so that's what people tend to think. But the future is basically that even at my house, I now have my thermostat connected to the internet. I have my lighting.
Lights.
I have my garage door opener connected to the internet. Some people have their security systems. All of those devices are IoT devices.
So basically, it's just taking, modernizing, if you will, what we have had for a long time, and giving it an internet-enabled connection.
Yeah.
That then enables it to do more than it did for us. Like you said, turning the lights on automatically, or voice activating the lights, or your thermostat's actually a really great example of that, because it not only can you control it via the internet, but the better ones that are like that actually kind of learn your habits.
Yeah.
And they learn when to turn on the heat and the cool and stuff like that in order to help conserve energy,
Right.
lower your cost, right?
Right.
So and that's even a step further, because chances are good they're not really doing all the algorithm and the data analyzing on the device. Is probably uploading that to
That's exactly
a
it.
central
Yeah,
system
it doesn't have a ton of
then doing the analysis.
It doesn't have a ton of computing power local. So what it does is it uploads that data and then basically gets instructions, from the mothership, if you will.
Right.
But I love I got to tell you, my thermostat, I love it because I password protected it, so my daughter can't crank up the heat in the winter or crank
the
up the AC
in the summer, right? Yeah. So just go on vacation and just leave her at 1/10 the whole time, right?
Exactly. But I will say, I got a Honeywell one. I didn't get like the Nest, which is the probably the most modern one, but the Honeywell one, and I think it was about $250.
Mm-hmm.
I installed it myself, and I've already saved that. Within a few months, maybe within 4 or 5 months, I saved that money
in energy costs.
Yeah, because after I went to bed, I had it drop the temperature down, and then before I would get home, I would have it do it something, and so I got it kind of modeled around my schedule, and just by changing 5 degrees in each direction, I wasn't just sitting there having the heat go on and off all day.
Right.
Yeah.
Very interesting. Okay, so how does that apply to marketing? What can you do with marketing?
Yeah.
And Internet of Things?
Well, the a lot of the problem with marketing is customer loyalty and customer experience.
Right.
And so it's how do you keep in touch with a customer, and how do you make a customer loyal, and then how do you make a customer an advocate? In other words, they start cheering for you out there.
Well, and they start endorsing you and pushing,
Yeah.
telling your friends, hey, you really got to buy this.
Right.
Yeah.
And the problem that we have with that, we all have with that, whether it's a real estate agent or anybody, is that we have thousands of customers and we only have so much time in the day to actually interact with them.
Right.
There's an expectation from consumers that you're just waiting for their phone call and you're waiting to send them something, and you're
Yeah.
and the truth is that we're all trying to really balance our resources. And so the promise of IoT, or the opportunity, I would say, with IoT, is that you can have these devices that are giving you data, that data is coming automatically to you, and you can act on it when it comes to you. So an example I think I gave you was right now you have text messaging off of the
riders.
signs,
Right.
and but eventually, and this might even be within the next few years, these IoT devices are so small, literally they're tinier than a penny.
Right.
And they can have a 7-month battery in them, or they can be solar powered or whatever, that instead of someone text messaging you, it's literally when someone walks up to a house, and people don't realize that their phones are all near field communications enabled nowadays, that it'll detect the phone, and you can have a message on it, or it could open up a web page, or it could open up the mobile tour or whatever. And then obviously it can ask them a question if they'd like to communicate with the realtor, and maybe it calls the realtor or it sends them a message or whatever. And so the deal here is it didn't even take an interaction. It didn't even take the person to make the step.
Right.
It automatically detected that there was a phone nearby, connected to that phone, asked permission, and then communicated.
Right.
And so now if you're a realtor, as people are walking in and out of your, the homes that you have for sale,
Listings, right?
you're not having to prompt them or anything like that. You just sit there and wait, and now all of a sudden it's coming to you, and so you can organize your time more effectively and everything else on when you're having open houses and et cetera, et cetera.
So that's really so the devices you're talking about in particular, they are Internet of Things, but they're also proximity based.
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah, that's a really good point. Some of these devices connect straight to the internet, like your Alexa.
Right.
But some of these connect via your phone to the internet. And so they it's like, I don't know the technical term for it, but it's basically piggybacking. Like my Apple Watch does not connect directly to the internet. I have a first
generation of that, right?
But it does connect to my mobile phone, which connects
the internet,
to the internet. And so what they're doing right now with a lot of these devices is teaching them how to piggyback like that. And so you don't actually physically have to have a network connection nearby. It can ask permission to use your phone and then send the message.
I see. Well, and that's actually, permission thing was actually where I was kind of going to go next, because especially with all the stuff going on with Facebook here recently, and the privacy issues and stuff like that, the way you described it at first was that somebody wouldn't really have a choice of whether or not they
always
got
have a
the
choice.
message, So then the question then, from a privacy and permission perspective, this is permission based. They get a choice to say, yes, I want to get this.
Yeah, and consumers even now can turn off this kind of stuff. But the fascinating thing is, like, even with Google, if you turn off your location services, it still detects when there's an NFC device nearby.
Well, location services and NFC aren't necessarily the same thing. It's just the NFC happens to be proximity based because it is in fact near field communication as opposed to location.
But I mean, you can turn off location services, you can turn off your cell phone,
just about everything, and you're still going to have NFC
and it's
turned
still
on.
and it's still going to detect internal, and that's part of the cost of having a cheaper phone.
Right.
That's That's how Apple and Google can sell things a lot less expensive. Is
Right.
they're collecting data on you. Now the interesting thing with IoT in the long run, though, there is that when I'm talking about these are devices that you know, like in this case, a realtor can place somewhere. So now it's not about someone trusting Google or trusting Facebook. It's about them trusting you,
Right.
which I think brings an awesome opportunity back to, you know, marketers and back to companies. And that's that they no longer have to rely on buying
There's
data.
not that third person middleman that's
Yeah.
handling the data that, you know, the consumers having to give their data to
Yeah.
in order for it to get into the hands of the realtor or whomever.
And consumers, if there's something of value, they're going to do it, right?
Right.
If I walk up to a house and it's locked up, and all of a sudden my phone beeps and it says, "Hey, would you like to do a mobile tour of the house?" That's something of value.
Right.
And so I might say yes, and it says, "What's your, you know, could I have your name and phone number?" I fill that in, and I start watching the mobile tour. Well, I know that I gave that data.
Right,
It
yeah.
wasn't just stolen from my phone, and
Right.
and in return, I'm getting some. Consumers don't mind trading for value. What they hate is abusing, you know, the
the
data.
data being abused
Yeah.
after the fact, you know. And kind of off on a tangent here, but I read a story just yesterday about a woman who bought something at a store, and she was asked if she wanted to give up her email address to get 5% off.
Yeah,
So she went ahead and she gave up her email address, and then the next like 6 or 7 years ensued of her continuing to get emails from this company, even though she, at first they didn't have an opt-out policy, and then afterwards the opt-out links didn't work, and it reached a point she was even calling the company and telling them to please stop emailing her, and they wouldn't, or they couldn't figure it out. I
and
don't
they
know
just
the
ruined a
whole deal.
relationship.
Right, and that's exactly what her point was, you know. So not really Internet of Things, but what you just said there kind of triggered that, because it's really all about handling the relationship properly, not
Yeah.
abusing that data when you get it, that sort of thing. So got any other examples of what a
Yeah.
way that Internet of Things could be used for marketing?
I mean, it's really it's one of those things that's amazing, honestly. But printed circuits are becoming a thing now, and that's that you can, instead of ordering circuit boards or ordering these devices, you'll literally be able to buy a printer someday that will print these out. And so one of the things that they can print out, literally, and I'm not making this up, is they're already testing printing displays. So what we take for granted, like a TV display right now,
Right.
you'll be able to eventually get a printer with OLED, with flexible LEDs to print something. What that does is now all of a sudden you've got a temporary display that you can put anywhere. And so now
So you could then use that to send a marketing message, so, you know,
there you go.
You know, to your example of virtual tours, but even beyond that, it could be displaying, you know, sending your newsletter, sending your latest listings, and all sorts of great information there.
So an example might be, you know, someone walks up to the, you know, door of the house or whatever,
Right.
and now all of a sudden your realtor looks at them and answers them because there's an IoT camera and a IoT display, you know, and it's not, they don't have to worry about someone stealing an iPad or anything. It's
Right, because if they take that, you just go home and print another one.
exactly,
Right?
yeah.
Right,
and
right.
so I think, you know, we're getting into the future of, you know, 5-10 years from now, we don't even
all the
realize.
stuff we've seen in the movies, right?
Exactly.
So
Exactly. And look, we throw out $1,000 phones 3 years after we use them. You know, these things are literally pennies. Like some of the chips that are out right now. One of them was Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and I found it online. It was $2.75.
that's
you know,
amazing.
yeah. And
just amazing.
I showed you, I think, one day that they have NFC cards that are coming out now.
Right, right.
And you can buy them now. And they're
Business cards.
And they're a few dollars a card.
Right,
And now
right,
when
right.
someone takes their business card and puts it by their phone, now it's going to pop up and say, do you want to open this link? And you can open up your home page or open up a intro video or
Right.
whatever.
And if done right, that could be an amazing marketing opportunity ongoing, because you could literally change that link to point to what you want it to on an ongoing basis.
Yeah.
You know,
some of the other stuff is honestly, let's say a real estate company really wants to maintain a good relationship with a client. You could have IoT devices on their house. You could have things that detect when there's a hailstorm, and you could have things
gutters overflowing,
basement
overflowing.
And so now all of a sudden you can basically kind of have an ongoing relationship with your customer years after you left them, and for pennies, not huge dollars. And so right now you think about that and you're like, oh my God, a system like that you're going to pay thousands of dollars for, plus hundreds of dollars a month for monitoring and everything else.
Systems, right?
But we're going to get to a point where some of that stuff is just going to be, hey, I sold you the house as a compliment. We're going to put our, we're not going to call it IoT then, I'm sure, but we're going to put our
home monitoring system in there.
We're going to put our monitoring package on there for you, where we just let you know
our home health system.
Yeah. And you as a consumer, what are you going to say? No, I don't
want that. No.
You're going to go, yeah, that's great.
But and to your point there, it piggybacks off the homeowner's Wi-Fi. Right. And if it's done right, and we're coming up with a great new business idea here, right?
Yeah.
Done right. It's got a little app on the phone or that can be installed where they can, when they get notifications, they open it up and it's branded for the agent or the agency or the brokerage, So interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, and maybe you put an addition on the back of your home, and you weren't aware that the property prices went up $20,000 or $30,000 in the last few years.
Right.
Well, now the real estate agent can detect that and send you something proactively and say, hey,
competitive market analysis says, hey, your home's now worth $30,000 more, that sort of thing. Very interesting.
So it's
cool.
It's to me, that's what's interesting, is collecting data and then being proactive with that data, and then of course the holy grail is being able to message back with these systems. But what you're doing there now is it's not up to Yelp, Facebook, Google to carry a relationship with your client.
Right.
Now your client is directly linked to you.
Right.
And you can control the quality of that relationship back and forth. And I with real estate agents, I'm sure it's huge. I'm guessing that with a real estate agent, if I bought a house 10 years ago, I probably don't go back to the real estate agent that I had unless they're keeping in touch with me.
Unless they're maintaining a relationship. A lot of real estate agents, they're a lot of their business after a while, once they start having some longevity, a lot of it is in fact either referral or repeat business.
So,
but to your point, it requires that maintenance of the relationship.
That touch. And so things like IoT are really going to be just an amazing opportunity. Some of the weird examples I gave, John McDonald, who's a local IoT expert, gave the example of that your car can actually tell even today. It's just that privacy won't let it.
Right.
Your car can tell when you're starting to weave in traffic. So if you're tired, for instance. And so if you enabled the devices and the alerts and everything else, you could actually have your car tell you, hey, there's a Starbucks, 2 miles down the road. Do you want me to go ahead and order your mocha latte, whatever?
Your favorite caffeinated beverage.
Yeah. And of course, what do? Now you wake up a little bit, you say, that's a good idea.
Right. Well, even the benefit of having it just alert you, start sending off a few dings or whatever to say, hey, wake up. Yeah.
And that's your car.
Right.
But what I'm going to is, no. What if Starbucks puts out a commuter mug that's, when you put it down in your car, it says, hey, I'd like to connect to your car. Is that okay? You say, yes, you have permission. And now your commuter mug tells you when,
hey, you're passing a Starbucks.
Yes.
Why don't you come get a drink? Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's what I think is fabulous, is that, the car company won't basically own that relationship. It's whatever device.
Starbucks would then own the relationship. Yeah. Very interesting.
That's what's fascinating to me about this, is I really think it's just going to explode. Now, the downside to it is that if you don't keep up with these technologies, you could be in real trouble. So if a real estate agent doesn't adopt IoT in 10 years, let's say,
right,
they might be out, because real estate agents that do adopt these technologies and have these unbelievable offerings are
Well, and that's a lot of
are-
what it comes down
Yeah.
to for a real estate agent when they're in a listing meeting, buying or selling. They have to be able to show the the prospective customer that not only are they keeping up with technology, but that they're going to use it to the best of their advantage to either help the customer buy a place at the best possible price or sell it at the best possible price.
Well, it's that, you're sitting next to your neighbor and your neighbor says, wait, your real estate agent doesn't have a monitoring system for your house, and
It's probably more on, you didn't get one of those?
yeah,
Why not?
exactly. And now you start to go,
Well,
oh, wait a second.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. So, yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, great. Any final thoughts on Internet of Things?
No, just that it's here now. I mean, they're doing fascinating, things now, and people that are really worried about the security in these things.
Privacy and security, right?
Yeah, I honestly wouldn't be, because IoT basically has a security layer kind of built into every aspect, that there always has to be a handshake, always has to be permission, to kind of
Right.
go between. And so years ago, when Dell is I have to be transparent, they're a client of mine. Dell used to have devices that were connected to the internet and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Dell didn't take care of security at that time.
Right.
That was up to you and your software developer and everything else. Well, now Dell makes these edge devices, they call them. And edge is a word that you guys are going to hear a lot. Edge just means it's on the outer edge of,
Perimeter.
yeah, the cloud,
Right.
But these edge devices have built-in security layers. So Dell is managing the security of the device, not leaving it up to a developer who might make a mistake, or
Right,
or
right.
or an operator who might turn something on, when they shouldn't. They're going to control, that security. So that's the cool thing about the future of this too, is that
You're starting to see that in technology in general. You're
Yeah.
starting to bake security right into
Right.
whatever it is you're developing,
Right.
whether it's hardware,
we don't
software.
install updates on Alexa.
Right.
We don't manage security. Well, a little bit we give it permissions, but for the most part, it's updating itself, and it's limiting how people can interact with
Right,
it
and
itself.
so the manufacturers, the builders, they're all trying to bake that in
Yeah.
right up front, instead of 20 years ago when we were first getting into computers and
no security.
there was no security. It was an afterthought at best,
Right.
and it's just become so necessary now. So, and I say 20 years ago, I know computers been around a lot longer than that. I'm just trying not to overly date myself. All right, great. So, final thoughts. It's here to stay, and it's going to really revolutionize the way we do a lot of things, and hopefully make lives a lot easier. So,
Absolutely.
all right, great. Well, thanks for joining us today, Doug. I appreciate it. If you guys have any more questions, want to learn more about IoT or real estate marketing, feel free to check us out at agentsauce.com. Thanks. Have a great day.